Hey guys, back again with another Salus Transformation podcast. I'm Lawrence Fountain.
Hello guys, my name is Vegas.
And today we are talking about the key habits. Now, don't get confused. While on the surface they seem simple, they have a wild and profound effect for dampening the impact of stress, allowing you to respond correctly to the stimulus of hard exercise, and really change the way that we live our lives, taking into consideration different things around nutrition, lifestyle, and recovery.
And when we talk about habits, habits are there to make our life a bit easier, to conserve energy. And want it or not, consciously or unconsciously, we create them habits automatically all the time. So let's say when we changing, place, we're moving to another location where we live, sometimes because it's all things are changed now, we start developing different habitual ways to conserve energy pretty much. So that's what our body does all the time. We can be conscious about it. We can set intention, can set intention specifically what kind of habits will be important to achieve certain result. Or if we're not going to do conscious intention, well, they're going to be set automatically as well. Let's say, depending on the environment we create to ourselves. Like, let's say if we're busy, working all the time, we don't have much time for ourselves, you're going to notice maybe your nutrition will be suffering. You'll be more lean towards taking takeaways or, skipping the workouts and skipping the movement routines or whatever that is, kind of to accommodate that energy capacity you have. So it's really important to understand when we're setting the goals, especially when we want to achieve physical transformation or, lifelong lasting transformation, we need to start getting that conscious intention. What kind of habits will create that personality I always wanted to be?
Now, don't get mistaken. The key habits are 60 to 70% of the transformation process. Without them, that we have nothing. They're a way of launching our bodies into the next phase in its most prime state. So there's no point in focusing on all the micro details around carb cycling and calories and supplementation if we don't have these key habits established. They're also a way of taking off in first gear because they're so moldable, because they're so adaptable to different situations. We can really start to integrate them into all sorts of situations. Business meeting, no problem. Date with a hot girl, no problem. Food with your parents, no problem. So that we never have to take these large steps backwards just because our environment changes. Once we integrate these habits into ourself, into our soul, we realize that you can apply them almost anywhere and anytime with a little consideration.
And here on our program as well, we develop them habits with most important things to focus on to achieve really general health before any detail will take place. So when we talk about transformation programs, let's say intensity, training hard and focusing on nutrition, maybe, start manipulating calories and all them small details. So actually, of course, will bring results. We give important detail to the transformation, achieve the results. But again, if we don't have foundation, like just Lawrence mentioned here, we don't have something to lean back into when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel overworked, any such situation, we need to know what's important to keep our health and keep our nervous system in a homeostatic state, in more stressed, balanced state.
Yeah. So one of the things that about life is has a way of throwing a spanner in the works, and sometimes there's situations that are out of control that mean we don't want to focus on a really restrictive diet, and we don't have the energy and the time to focus that hard on nutrition, but that's when we can fall back onto these key habits and be like, okay, look, I've got these deadlines for work. I know that I have to grind now. I know that I have to work hard. Of course, you're not going to eat chicken and rice 5 times in a day, but you can follow these key guiding principles to make sure that your health isn't left to the wayside just because we have to focus on other responsibilities such as work or family. This is a way of really holding ground. And we see the people that lay these foundations down now and don't get caught up in the detail yet, because the detail is important, make the biggest progress because they can really start to mold any situation, any environment, and make progress. So without further ado, should we go into a few?
I think we should, without further ado, let's go into the habits we identify is the most important ones to stick to achieve that result you always wanted, being physical transformation and looking amazing, feeling amazing. So how you can improve the health, and we have 16 total habits we want to focus on at the beginning of any transformation, training any individuals, and we're going to be talking for each individual habit today as well in more detail.
Let's just get it clear as well. If you were to just follow these key habits every day for a year, you'd be in the best shape of your life, right?
Yeah, exactly. That would be, it's already having the habits in place already would be, the journey becomes more automatic. Like we talked before just earlier, having them shortcuts, good quality shortcuts to preserve energy will get results, and the results will come much, much quicker and with less effort.
But we're not going to be happy with doing it in a year, right? So we're obviously going to add the detail after this layer. But let's go into the first one. And the first key habit is something that's overlooked so much.
Really obvious as well.
Really obvious. And that is hydration. Now, the body, everyone knows this statistic of it being mostly made up of water, and especially the brain. It consists of so much water, and we often fail to supply our body with the requirements it needs on a daily basis to function at its best. And guess what? When the brain is starved and dehydrated along with the rest of the body, it's not going to perform, which means every other task that's needed within to achieve, you've got no chance. It doesn't matter how much you train. It doesn't matter how much you diet. When you're dehydrated, chances are all those systems are going to fail.
And all the system requires adequate hydration. So when we're talking about, nutrient absorption, for example, let's say digestion as well, all the functions will require adequate amount of water. You need adequate amount of water in your gut to actually absorb nutrients, to assimilate the vitamins and minerals in your body, especially amino acids as well, will have massive functions in your genetic expression as well. So really, that's only one aspect. But then you think about, when we're talking from physical perspective as well, like if we're not drinking enough water and we feel dehydrated, even when we're training, injury risk will go over the roof. Because again, all them soft tissues requires adequate amount of water. It's all your signaling mechanism from the brain to the body, to the muscle as well, will require hydration as well. So
even muscle contraction, like
exactly.
Tensing the muscle itself, the reason why you're all here to contract muscle and build it out, it's going to fail. It's going to fail if you're dehydrated.
And again, just understanding, sometimes when we dehydrated, like one most common thing, of course, if I'm dehydrated, I feel thirsty. But then you have to understand there's so many connections there. Let's say headaches, tension headaches, muscle pains, or let's say indigestion, bloatedness. So many symptoms can be maybe not necessarily leading towards, okay, I'm probably dehydrated. But understanding the benefit of well-hydrated body and, all them symptoms when you dehydrated will give you that perception, okay, I might need just drink a little bit more water. Maybe I dehydrated. And before the injury risk is going to be less. You're going to be training much more effectively. Your temperature, your temperature balance will be different as well. So for example, if I'm training really intensive session and I'm training outside. If you're dehydrated, you're more likely gonna get the heat stroke, of course. And the same thing in the cold environments. Your body will not warm up really well as well, so you might gonna go into hypothermia much quicker. So I can see so many aspects there to give you good reason to focus on hydration. I think we need to just talk about what would be the adequate amounts.
Yeah, definitely around 2.5, 3.5 liters, depending on your body size and depending on your activity levels. But a maximum baseline, a minimum baseline of 2 liters per day, even if you're sitting around doing nothing. The brain requires that hydration, that fuel to support great cognitive thinking. It's really important that we understand this is a key pillar to the transformation process. And later on down the journey, when we're going into the final phases, it's everything. And staying hydrated and getting that final look where we are onboarding a hell of a lot of water is going to be one of the hardest elements. And when we're in the low calories, of course, it's going to be the water that keeps you feeling full. So you really need to embrace this habit now. And I like to just, as I always say to my clients, create watering holes. I like to have it visually around me in all spaces. So, I've got water at the side of my bed. I've got water at my desk. When I get into the car, I've got water in the car. You need to have it visible. And if you can't do that, set a reminder in your phone. It's really that important that you track and make sure that we get that quota in. And for the most part, that's going to be in the very first part of the day. As soon as you rise, that you want to feel at least 30 to 40% of that quota and at least drink 1 liter.
So guys, number one priority, number one habit is hydration. And I hope we put that message across why it's important, really. So let's go to number 2. And number 2 is the meal frequency, something to do with nutrition, really. So when it comes to meal frequency, this is really common, especially in our society right now, when we're busy, when we overworked, we don't have time to prepare meals properly as well. So it's really common. I think, everyone experiencing ourselves as well. But you have to understand again, having, feeding times at certain times on a daily basis will establish the routine in the body. So that means the processes will happen at the right time for the circadian rhythm. So let's say when you wake up in the morning, you have your breakfast, and you have your lunch, and you have gaps in between, and then you have your dinner, not too close to your bedtime. Of course, that routine over time will get consistent results for your body to absorb nutrients effectively, to digest food as well. So, it's many functions there will be impaired if we're not going to focus on, consistent meal timing. So let's say if we're snacking all the time and we're skipping meals, and one day we have loads of snacks, the next day we're not eating at all, we're having just breakfast and skip meals to the dinner. So your body doesn't really stick to routine overall. And of course, the system is just going to be overwhelmed.
And of course, when we've been in an unhealthy state, our response to low blood sugar, i.e. long periods without food, is, what's the word I'm looking for? Exacerbated. It's extreme. It's an incorrect response, and that leads to an excess amount of stress hormone being released, which plays a key role in affecting the way we sleep, which drives down mood, drives down energy, drives down the testosterone that we need to build that muscle and churn through fat at an incredible rate. So, of course, in this phase, we're going to ask you to eat every 3 to 4 hours. You're looking at a meal, look at 4 meals a day, evenly spread out so that we have that period for digestion, but we're keeping the blood sugar levels at a point where the body doesn't feel so stressed. Everything feels a little bit easier on the body, and the nervous system calms. And actually we start to produce the chemicals, the hydrochloric acid that we need to really start to utilize food better. And that only comes from dampening the impact of the world, the stress that the world puts on us. Food is a stress reliever. We call it a parasympathetic activity, and it really supports the body in finding that homeostatic balance. Whilst there's a big trend around fasting, and we utilize fasting all the time, we think it's fantastic. It's not great at the start.
It's a detail which can be added in the process, right? During the process. And, again, it's a lot of strategies with the nutrition, but when we're talking about habits, and we just discussed at the beginning, it's all about establishing the baseline, right? So we establishing the baseline. So when things become too intensive, too overwhelmed, we have something to push back on and actually reset, rebalance, to fight back again. So it's really important here to note, of course, some diets would be effective, like you say, fasting diets. There's a lot of research on that as well. And definitely you can get amazing results with that. We can stimulate the system in different ways, but it's all depends on the timing. It really depends on, can we accept a certain amounts of stress for restricting ourselves from continuous bouts of digestion and continuous bout of assimilation. So when we digest, we give a bit of time to assimilate food as well. That's why it's important to maintain them gaps a bit short at the beginning to establish that balance, really.
And you've got to remember, like, your digestive capabilities are probably suboptimal, to say the least, which means, adequate sources of each macronutrient need to be spread out so that we can fit the quota we need for each of those macronutrients, but at the same time, utilize it properly. So these small, frequent meals have a really profound effect on calming the nervous system, allowing for better digestion, allowing for better sleep, increasing mood and energy. And you're going to really feel a huge impact when you lay that foundation in place.
So just to recap, number 2 is meal frequency, and really, here to take home points would be, having meals frequently through the day, and make sure we're having enough gaps in between to allow the system to digest and process the food and assimilate as well, so you can actually absorb the nutrients. So we don't want to rev the engine when we're just snacking continuously and we're digesting but not necessarily assimilating. And with the same, we don't want to have massive gaps when we're creating stress and we're creating imbalance in terms of the blood glucose regulation as well, and creating that stress when your body has to kind of pick up the blood glucose and create that homeostatic state again. So that we don't want that stress at the beginning. So let's go to next one, I think.
What's number 3? You tell me.
No, number 3 is setting the intention. And again, guys, just have to remember here, all them is not, it depends, like when we're talking about habits like 1, 2, 3, 4 and going forward to 16, it's not necessarily in the way they should be performed as well. Every habit is really important in their own right.
Yeah, everyone is important in their own right, but also has a compounding effect to the next one and to every other one in the list. So really nailing all of them can really drastically change the way you think and feel about life, and certainly the way that you look. So let's go into
setting the intention now.
Setting the intention.
And setting intention is pretty much, setting your day, consciously setting your day right as well. So it's all about, what you would like to achieve today, what kind of things you plan today as well. So not overwhelming yourself with, millions of tasks, but what kind of 3 things would be important today so you can actually feel good about yourself at the end. And, that has to be, you have to kind of give yourself that opportunity in the morning without any,
that's not the thing, right? That's not the habit.
Well, that was a breakfast, setting intention for breakfast.
Cover your bases
for breakfast, right?
I don't know if that's the same thing.
I thought the covering the bases is more like, setting an intention.
It's like whatever you need.
Is it to do with nutrition?
Yeah.
All right, so then you go with it. It's like I was thinking setting intention.
No, it's included as well. It's like covering everything at the start of the day.
Cool, so sorry about that.
That's all right. It's just make sure it, otherwise someone's going to pick us up at it. Who introduced it?
I think me. Yeah, I'll mention first and then I'll remind you.
I went so what's the next one? Yeah. So why don't you tell me the next one, Virgis?
So the next one, number 3, and this is going to be setting the... I forgot, what's that?
covering your bases at breakfast.
Yeah. Okay. So start again.
So what's the next habit, Virgis?
So number 3 is covering the bases in the morning.
And that's going to cover a wide variety of things,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely.
But it's more about, going into the day as prepared as possible. We actually have a fair amount of control around our circumstances when we wake up. Usually we wake up at home. We have the option to utilize our kitchen. We have the things that we need around us. And so this is an opportunity to go into the day fully prepared. And of course, if we're in those advanced strategies like fasting, we might not think about breakfast, but we are having this expanse of time where we are covering our bases. So of course, that's going to include your hydration. Of course, that's going to include onboarding supplementation. It's going to include breakfast, but equally, it's going to include setting your intention for the day.
Exactly. And it's really important to, set that intention first thing in the morning. So let's say, usually it's really common for most of you, probably, even carrying, the phone and having the phone by the bedside as well. So when you wake up, first thing you get let's read the news on what's happening around the world right now. But that's really give you that perception of different information. What it doesn't really, you can set intention completely differently. Let's say if you're reading the news, which is going to be negative, you might set that negative intention for the day. So it's really important to dedicate, that golden hour or golden 10 minutes for yourself, and you not, get distracted by any other media really, and setting that intention where it comes from within. So creating that motivation in yourself.
So just covering what you need to cover to be in the best possible state, to take on the stress of the world so that, whatever happens throughout that day, we know we've got at least 1 liter of water. We know we've got at least 30 grams of protein down us. We know we've taken on those fats, those carbohydrates. We've gone through this self-care where their mind is set up and calm going into the day so we can respond well to issues and complications, because life's not perfect. But if we can wake and set our body up in the right way, of course, that's going to change the way each day plays out. And if we can change the way each day plays out, think how different life is going to be.
So creating, again, just recap again, setting that intention and setting the morning routine in you for yourself is really the key for success, being in the transformation and applying them habits. And this is great habit number 3, where you actually can set all them conscious tasks we need to do. So I think
that could just be meal prep.
Exactly. So again, it just depends what the goal really is, and then every day setting that conscious intention towards that goal to achieve it on a daily basis. What kind of task you're going to be do today to get a little bit closer, to inch closer, 1%, 2%, and it's just slow intention going forward.
And I think we're going to cover this in a lot more detail when we go into both morning and evening routines, but we'll just, give you an idea of what that really means right now. Is that we want you entering your best self into each day so that we get the most return on what we're giving to the world, what energy we're giving to the world. We want something we want a return on that investment. We want the results, and that takes preparation and a little bit of time to dedicate towards self-care and your body.
So guys, think about it. And this is the important habit. We go to habit number 4, and we're going to start covering a little bit more in terms of macronutrients right now. So first, the most important micronutrients is going to be habit number 4, and that's a protein intake.
We all know that we need to get adequate amounts of protein to build lean mass, but it has so many other tasks. Every single cell in the body is made from protein. So obviously it shouldn't be something that we second guess. It needs to be tracked. It needs to be understood. It needs to be applied to every single meal. Of course, increasing the chances of getting our full quota in vastly are greater when we have an adequate amount of protein with each meal. We shouldn't be trying to attempt to get 200 grams of protein in the last meal of the day because we were too lazy or didn't think about our meals or give them enough structure to provide us with protein consistently. And supplying our body with an effective amino acid pool allows the body to function at its best.
And when we're talking about optimal performance, optimal health, adequate amount of proteins, of course, is going to be really one of the most important factors. We talked about hydration already. How important is that? It's no, taking away from the protein as well. It's such an important nutrient when we're considering our meals, considering our preparation as well. So, number one priority when you're cooking, when you're preparing meals, you have to start thinking about how much natural protein you have in this particular meal, and that will affect your hunger sensation. You'll affect your cravings as well. And of course, like Lawrence mentioned, all the processes in the body requires that. So your hormonal expression for the day as well will be impaired if the protein level is going to be not adequate for the day. And another thing to note here as well, is really important. You can't just go, let's say if I miss the window of feeding for the day, let's say I was just gonna catch up in the evening, gonna have that like 200 grams for, in one meal. Well, the body doesn't really work like that. It takes time for the body to absorb certain amounts, and of course it's the limitations and everything. So we can't just shove a certain amount of calories and expect all them calories will do the work, and they will go to areas we would like them to go. So of course absorption rates are really individual subject here, and really depends. So especially when we're starting any kind of process and we're starting from bad habits, absorption would be quite poor at the start as well. So having the adequate amounts of protein, let's say 20 to 30 grams per meal, and having them break, so we discussed in the meal frequency habit, to really take time to assimilate, to process that, and give all the benefit to create health, to create performance, to create all the goals you're setting to yourself to achieve.
And I think one of the really key points to make here is that over consuming animal proteins in one sitting often lead to fermentation. So the food just rots in your gut. Anything we're unable to digest or unable to utilize really starts to have an impact on the microbiome. And for those that don't know much about the microbiome, we can commonly think of it as the second brain. So imagine just dumping a load of wasted food onto the surface of your normal brain, how that would impact. It's no different from when we put food into our gut and allow it to rot. It creates an environment, an inhospitable environment that really changes every function of your body. It's like the control center of the way we feel about the world, or we think about ourselves. It's part of the enteric system, and so it's really important that we take care of our gut, and that means having enough protein that we stimulate hydrochloric acid, our stomach acid, but not so much that we are failing to digest it. It rots in our stomach and it causes issues with gut balance.
Yeah, it creates loads of problems as well. So again, here the balance is the key. Not too much, not too little as well. And it really, depends on individual needs as well. Like we mentioned in water intake, it can be so varied as well. It depends on your body weight, depends on circumstances. If you're really active and you're training continuously, of course, you're going to require much more protein to deal with that repair and balance and growth as well. If you're more sedentary as well, taking the new habits, you might going to need a little bit less. But rule of thumb, what we just mentioned before, is 20 to 30 grams is going to be a good start, and then building from that, just going forward, would be the way to go.
And if anyone doesn't know what that looks like, that's roughly a palm size of animal protein. It's a little bit harder to track when it comes to plant-based protein, but you can just use a simple Google search or put it into MyFitnessPal to assess whether that's an adequate amount of protein.
And just also would like to add to that. We're going a little bit over on this topic, but it's important to note here as well. When some people might be vegetarian or vegan, and they might not have animal proteins in their diet as well. Well, we're not against, let's say, eating meat or being vegetarian as well. It's all about the balance. Again, it's really, it depends how you source the products, and we are all about natural sources. So if being vegetarian as well, we can, it's not necessarily being vegetarian, it can be healthy, it can be quite bad as well if we eating a lot of processed food. So the same thing with omnivore is the same thing. If we having the processed food and processed meats as well, in all the nutrients coming from farmed food, especially, so we're having antibiotics, having all the other medications in animals. Of course, that's going to be quite waste as well for the body.
Cool. Should we get on to the next habit?
Yeah, so next habit, again, it would be one of the micronutrients, but we'll kind of split that. And number 5 is vegetable intake.
Vegetable intake. Now, vegetable intake is everything. It's nature's way of supporting the body, protecting the body against illness and disease, and there is no amount of supplementation that can provide the level of support, to provide the level of phytonutrients and fiber that a huge plate of vegetables will do for you. It's going to be a way that you can keep your calories low and keeping full, and it's a way that we're going to onboard vitamins in abundance so that our body can perform at its best. And it's a real cornerstone habit to really look at your plate and look at the color and assess whether it's green enough or not. Because realistically, those are the sort of vegetables that we can never miss out. The vegetables have to dominate the plate. A lot of the time you'll see people doing prep diets when they've got like 2 bits of broccoli next to their chicken and a mass of rice. Actually, you're missing out on a world of benefits, because this isn't just about now. This is about the future. This is about being healthy into old age. And actually, vegetables offers you that opportunity to almost take on health insurance of like protecting you against being sick all the time and improving your immune system. So I really want you to understand the importance of vegetables and the impact that has. And I don't frankly care if you don't like them. It's not a choice. It's it's one of those responsibilities as an adult that we just have to get on with.
Just becoming the person who actually likes them. The same thing with with the training as well. If you don't like certain modality of training, but then at the end of the day you want to achieve certain results which requires that modality, we need to become that person who actually enjoys that activity, and of course that will bring that benefit. So when it comes to vegetable, guys have to understand, that's what really creates the balance for the nutrition. So it brings the nutrients to your body. You got vitamins, minerals, and fibers as well, which requires for many functions as well. So adding the vegetables with every single meal, that's another habit.
Next.
So we're going next now. We're going through the list, and next habit would be fat intake.
Yeah, I think fats are given a better rap actually over the last few years. There's a lot of talk of the benefits of healthy fat, and of course they're completely right. They have a huge impact on endocrine function, and most toxins are fat soluble. So you need fat within the diet to make sure that we are detoxifying from all the crap in the environment, basically all the things that are ingested through the body, through our skin, or through the foods that we eat need to be detoxified. So a small amount of fat is required just to function and be healthy.
And key note here as well, understanding, the quality of fats, of course, matters here as well. So when we're talking about fat intake, we're not talking about processed fats as well, especially hydrogenated fats would be really detrimental in any amount in your body. So, when we look at all the processed food, really, when you look at ingredients, you will see ingredients containing hydrogenated fats. And again, that product actually preserves the shelf life of the processed food. So that's why they're there in the first place. So when we're talking about fat intake, anything coming from natural sources like avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil would be really beneficial for your body. But, when it comes to processed stuff, it can be quite dangerous.
And I think there's a massive misconception on saturated fats as well. You'll see, the traditional bodybuilding diet of a really lean chicken, rice, and a few vegetables. And there's no saturated fat. And the reason that they can get away with that is because they are manipulating their testosterone levels with anabolic steroids. And actually, saturated fat plays a key role in testosterone production. So do we want to cut it out completely? No. Do we want to moderate it? Yes, of course. With all the macronutrients, balance is key as usual. We're going to go back to this point, and there's going to be times where the fat's low or the fat's high. But right now, we're going to just focus on any time that we're in this low focus period is just having a moderate amount.
So here, when we're talking about habits, the balance is the key. So we're not excluding any macronutrients from the diet. We adding all them habits in place to help you guys to get yourself into a baseline to perform to high level when we need to. So of course, later on through the process, you might experiment with some small details for your nutrition, for your training. But the baseline is this. We need to make sure we're adding and we're not excluding, and we make sure we have good relationship with all the food sources, really.
Cool. Let's go on to the next habit.
And next habit number 7, and there's another macronutrient, is carbohydrates. So again, it's a lot of bad rap about it. And we talk about, when we mention carbohydrates, kind of, again, when people think about fat loss, excluding carbohydrates is kind of number one priority. What all the people will kind of lean towards. High fat diets kind of thing, fasting, what we just discussed earlier as well. But again, you have to understand, where we are along the continuum. So we understand where, how stressed our body is. And if our body is, dealing with the chronic stress, carbohydrates, natural sources of carbohydrates is going to be amazing for your stress modulation.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is balancing blood glucose. So we're changing the way your body produces stress, and most natural carbohydrates have glucose disposal agents, so they're actually going to lower your blood glucose. So sometimes when we're overstressed, we have high blood glucose. Those can actually dampen that. When we're going for long periods without eating, obviously carbohydrates are going to increase blood glucose, and that has a really crazy effect of making you feel calm, making you feel more relaxed, allowing the body to kick over into that parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest mode, where the body loves to grow, it loves to burn fat, it loves to re-energize. And carbohydrates are an amazing tool for dampening the stresses of life, and of course, as always, using them in balance, and always from a fantastic source, basically anything that grows in the ground or hangs off a tree, right?
Exactly. And when we're talking about natural sources as well, is a things to note here as well. When we take fruits, and let's say eating fruit, that's quite, that's no process there. It's not much. You just pick up that from the tree, or pick up that from the ground. But then when, let's say, if we do fruit juice, let's say, for example, well, the structure changes now. It becomes more processed. So amounts of glycogen in that product is going to be much higher now for amounts of concentration in that food as well. So of course, that will spike up the blood glucose. And even thinking of having a glass of juice on a daily basis, couple of times per day is quite healthy habit to have. But think about it, how many fruits you need to squeeze in that glass to create that juice in the first place. So can you really consume that amount in one go? And the nature, created environment beneficial for us to have sweet things as well, but at the same time have enough time to dispose extra blood glucose through the system as well, like Lawrence just mentioned. So unprocessed natural carbohydrates is definitely a way to go, and then everything was going to be processed. It can impair the results, especially when we're talking about baseline habits.
So let's just go a little bit over what do we mean by blood glucose. So that's like the amount of sugar that's in your blood at any one time. Now, too low, we want it to be a little bit lower. A hormone called glucagon is released, which is fairly low impact. It will travel around the body, picking up fat as an energy source, and we can utilize that for energy. Even going lower than that, and cortisol release is okay in a small amount when it's balanced, when it's moderated, when it's modulated, and we are able to detoxify that. The problem comes when we spend a lot of time in really low blood glucose and we're overstimulating the central nervous system from this continuous exposure of cortisol production, stress hormone production. And then on the other side of that, when blood glucose is too high, we're going to store that as that's going to drive up insulin, and we're going to store it in body fat.
Yeah. And then just to note again, so as you can see, carbohydrates, it can be really great for stress modulation, especially when we having bouts of high intensity activities, and then we have to reset our nervous system. So it can play really big role. So again, creating that good relationship with nutrients is really important. Understanding all the nutrients are important at certain times, and excluding them can create negative effects, especially when you're recovering, when you're focusing on growth and recovery.
Especially when we look deeper into different studies that from different people that we've worked with, and realizing that actually some stages of exercise you can be very heavily carb dominant, and if we don't have access to a small amount of carbohydrates, the next step is to burn through proteins that we need to build muscle. So it's a really good opportunity to give your body everything it needs to be able to fuel properly and handle the impact of exercise and the stress of life.
So let's, I think, time to go to number 8, and we're kind of halfway through the list now. And number 8 is going to be heavy meals on our list, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about portion sizes now.
Yeah, so when we think about our evening meal, we don't want it to disrupt our sleep. Of course, the body is capable of digesting food while you sleep, but it really interferes with going into that sort of rest and digest mode. We really want to have food adequately digested before we go to sleep, so that our blood sugar levels aren't interfered with, so that we aren't having big peaks and troughs in the night, so that we're not overstimulated and creating those waking points. It can really create that sensation of grogginess in the morning when we eat late at night, and we never really slip into that deep sleep because we are feeding the system, we're overstimulating the system by enjoying those meals too late into the evening. And I think that's usually where it comes into play, is people with busy schedules, they don't plan their days that well, and they can get in from work at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and by the time they've cooked their food, they're eating at 10, and they wonder why they're having complications with digestive issues. They're struggling with energy, they have no appetite in the morning, and a lot of that can be traced to eating too late.
And as you can see, guys, this habit is really tied up with the habit number 2 on a meal frequency. So like Lawrence just mentioned here, it's a good example of that. When we're skipping meals, when we not regulating our blood glucose levels really well through the day, because we busy, because we stressed up, maybe we skip the meals now, let's say, then you come to the evening and then we kind of binge on the food as well because we feel hungry. Of course, they're going to create really bad environment for our body to recover, to sleep, and to digest food properly, and to absorb and assimilate. So it's really important to kind of tie up them 2 habits together to create the best possible scenario for us to adapt. So meal timing and meal frequency is really the key here.
Of course. And there is a thousand other things we could talk about around this, but we will go into it in more detail in future.
So let's get on with the habit number 9 now, and we're going to habit number 9 is going to be based on recovery, and this is really, really important again. So all of them has the same important, and that's number 9 is sleep.
Well, if I could give one gift to the world, it would be adequate sleep, sufficient and energizing sleep to everyone. I truly and genuinely believe half of the world's issues could be solved especially around mental health and disease, could be solved if we all got more sleep. We live in a generation where it's almost glorified when you don't sleep. It's glorified when you're on the grind and you're up early and you go to bed late and you're on the go all the time and you're like, yeah, I can survive off 4 hours. No, I can survive off 3. And actually what we're doing is destroying any chance of longevity that we have. And obviously you're not going to know that till it's the last part of your life and you're like, holy crap, I can't change anything now. Sleep is everything to everyone. It changes the way that we perceive the world. It completely overhauls our hormones. When we don't sleep, everything's difficult. Our cravings are high, our control of our emotions are low. It really changes the way every day plays out. And so how we get more consistent, more deep, more quality sleep, we're going to go over into a hell of a lot of detail. One of the key things that you can do right now, and this is, a tough pill to swallow, is that you need to be harder on yourself. We need to have a level of discipline. And there's a reason why your parents put you to bed at a certain time every night. It's because they wanted the best for you and you were an arsehole the next day, if not. It's the body really starts to respond well to having that regular routine.
And exactly, the sleep is actually the main recovery for our command center, for our brain, right? So, especially it's more important than ever right now when you're embarking on a transformation process, when you're learning new skills, when you're learning new information, to absorb that new information. We know we're not compartmentalize that information, not putting that information straight into our brain like a memory stick. It actually takes a little bit longer for your brain to assimilate information as well and then process that. So if we're not getting adequate amount of sleep, by the time we wake up in the morning, half of that information probably not sit well with our body. Especially that can be in things with to do with the training. That things can be learned through the process of following the new nutritional strategies. So, getting adequate amount of sleep is not just the amount of sleep is important, but the quality as well. So, it's really important to note, of course, from the research, 7.5 to 8 hours is quite adequate for each individual. It's kind of, and here it's a bit different compared to, let's say, when we talk about nutrition, this is actually along the spectrum for most of the people. So it's not like, if I'm more healthier and I can sleep less, or, if I'm a little bit unhealthy, I need to sleep more. It's actually similar amounts from research shown. It's about 8 to 9 hours even. It's really adequate. It's really important to get for each individual. And just talking about that quality, I think Loris can add on that as well.
Yeah, of course. When it's a conversation that I always prompt at the start of investigating what we need to work on, and I always ask the question of whether someone sleeps, and they always say, yeah, no problem, until you dig deeper and you're like, okay, how long does it take you to get to sleep? And they're like, 40 minutes. Okay, you're not sleeping well.
How many times you wake up through the night?
Yeah, how many times you go into the toilet in the night? And they're like, and the usual response is, I think I just drink too much water. That's not the case at all. You're in low quality, shallow sleep that doesn't necessarily repair the body at the level that we need to. If you're having those vivid dreams, if you're waking up tired, exhausted, feeling like you've been dreaming for days,
you're not to wake up.
Yeah, you're not having a good quality sleep. Should be, a level of grogginess too. Waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning with an insane amount of alertness is chronic stress. So what you want to think is, okay, when you wake up, does it take you a minute or two to come round? Do you have to have some time to adapt to the world? Or is your body in high alert when it's like, bang, I'm awake, I'm ready for the day? Because that's actually quite detrimental to your health. So it's a combination between not taking an hour or two to get to your feet and but not at the same time being super alert. And it's something that I'm wildly passionate, something that the team is crazy into, because we know the impact. If you change someone's quality of sleep, if you change the way that they have that circadian rhythm, pretty much everything will fall into place on its own. You will naturally gravitate towards better food. You will feel the motivation to exercise. You won't doubt yourself. Your subconscious changes when you sleep well. Every aspect of your being is dependent on the quality of your sleep. And so if you're feeling anxious or you're feeling depressed, really look towards sleep as the solution. Take away the stimulants at night, get off your phone, take away the technology, learn to embrace the dark in the evening, take away all that light and take your mind away from the stresses of the day. So, a book or a podcast is a just like this one is a great place to start.
Exactly. And it's again, with every new habit, it requires conscious effort. So first of all, you need to kind of put yourself along that continuum again. So where you are right now with your sleep, just being really honest, and if the quality of sleep is not sufficient, if the amount of time is not sufficient, something can be improved here. And also, just knowing them tips that actually can improve your health, improve your performance by, focusing on recovery. I think it's really motivational here, because a lot of people suffering with so many conditions, and sometimes it can be attributed to just really poor recovery here. So take note here. Really important habit, and a lot of consequences can be dealt with.
And I think in the world of social media, it's one of the things that no one talks about, but all the pros do it. Olympic athletes, they sleep solidly. One of the main focuses for bodybuilders, physique models, is to get as much sleep as possible. But sure, of course, they don't post that. Who wants to know about them tucked up in bed at night? All you want to hear is about the big sessions and the performance and the go hard, the no days off. And actually, a lot of the time the body's not ready to handle that, and it will impact in sleep and impact on your results. So we really, really want you to lay the foundations of great sleep. And guess what? All these key habits play a large role in improving your sleep.
Okay, so let's go to habit number 10, and this is really interesting, because it's kind of the substance really inhibits the recovery completely, right? So we're going to be talking about alcohol consumption, and we're actually going to be talking about relationship with alcohol as well, the way you think about alcohol, why it actually gives you.
Yeah, so I am not the standard fitness professional. I've had plenty of time, drinking heavily all weekend, partying excessively for 10 to 15 years, and I would never give up alcohol. I can do very long periods of time without it. But some of the best times in my life, some of the best connections that I've ever made with people, and still to this day, like joining up with friends and having a drink and reminiscing on old times is good for the soul. And I truly believe that. But do we need it to, get in the way of our dreams? There's no way around the fact that it's a toxin. It's not healthy for you. The habits that it induces, you'll know from your past experience, are not one of the character that you need to be right now. So, if we're talking about progressing at the fastest rate possible, giving your body one less task to do of detoxifying that alcohol is going to allow the body to focus on things that, we should be really thinking about right now.
And understanding exactly, the alcohol is a toxin for our body, whatever that would be, whatever kind of, how that's going to be beer, or it's going to be wine, or any kind of type of alcohol is going to be toxin for your body. Just understanding that alone, just gives you that perception. And then we're not saying like we're against alcohol completely. Like, if you're a fitness professional, or embarking in transformation process, you should cut it completely. It's not about that. It's again, just understanding where you are right now, what your stress levels are right now. Do you need alcohol because you're feeling stress, or alcohol, like Lawrence mentioned, gives you that different perspective maybe. But then again, you have to understand it might gonna inhibit the results, and maybe it's not the right time at this point. But having that in your life, especially when we really healthy individual, when you develop that health, develop that performance, once in a while, your body will be able to cope with it. But if you're fueling your stress with alcohol, well, it's just gonna be like a rat race, really.
And I think there's a degree of like you've got to ask yourself like, why do we get drunk? Are we compensating for a lack of confidence, a lack of drive towards going after the things that we really like? You know, chatting a girl up sober can be terrifying, but actually, if you were in a really good state of mind and felt super confident with your appearance and how you are as a person, you know, we really don't have to utilize alcohol to compensate for that lack of confidence. And of course, I've been there in the past. Of course, you know, I wouldn't dream of going up to a woman and having a conversation with her unless I'd necked, you know, at least 3 or 4 drinks first. But this isn't the time. You know, now we've gone through that why. We've recognized that we need to be someone different. We need to create those changes, and alcohol will really hold you back. And we've got a clear policy when we're in those high focus periods, when we're knuckling down, when we need the excess recovery, we don't drink. It's as simple as that. When we're in our low focus periods, I want you to assess the situation, and I want you to use alcohol to enhance relationships, celebrate life, celebrate wins. That's perfectly fine, but it should never be part of your daily routine or even your weekly routine. You will not get progress. It will impact your sleep. It will impact your mental health. You can't build muscle when in the presence of alcohol. You can't burn fat when the body has a presence of alcohol. So that frequency has to change. We have to develop, as we say in the PDF, develop a positive relationship with alcohol.
Amazing. And that's nothing to add really here. It's exactly what I wanted to say as well. It's having the positive relationship, and also just understanding the consequences of what the negative effects on your system, and can actually, you know, can you actually afford to have them negative effects right now? And, you know, what's really important right now? So, you know, asking them questions. So I think we cover that quite well now. And, you know, again, it's not restricted diet here. We're not thinking like you should be completely restricting yourself. And if you was enjoying, you know, having a glass of wine from time to time, just need to think about, you know, how it's affecting you right now.
Yeah. Going into a first date sober is probably not a great idea. Okay, you maybe want to lift the spirits and get that little edge there is completely fine. But again, remember about your intentions and keep focused on what your long-term goals are.
Okay, next habit, number 11. And number 11, again, tied up to that as well, we were just talking right now, is socializing wisely.
This is something for me that was very difficult coming away from the party scene and into the fitness industry and socializing a lot more with fitness professionals. I actually resisted it heavily at first, and I would not want to associate myself with those people because I knew I wasn't as extreme as them. But it's a really difficult one because people can be triggers. People can be triggers for your old habits, your old self, your old thinking, your own mindset. And so, you know, I'm not one of these people that believe in turning your back on people just because they don't align with your new goals. But at the same time, changing the frequency in which you see someone who, for example, might want to drink excessively, might want to stay out late, might, you know, expose you to junk food all the time can be a great idea. You know, no one's saying don't see the friends that are a bad influence, because those friends are great sometimes. You know, sometimes we want to be taken for that ride, and you know, if you know we've been in a bad through a bad breakup, of course we're going to depend on that friend to go out, have a drink with, and really embrace that sort of experience. But at the same time, it's about socializing wisely. Do these people support you? Do these people compound your dreams? Do they motivate you to be better? Do they support you with what you want to achieve? Or are they giving you a hard time? Are they mocking you for your new diet, your new lifestyle? And that can be a hindrance because we all are social creatures. We all want to be part of a pack. And one of the main reasons that this program has been so successful is we've offered an alternative friendship group with all the other candidates that are here to support you, and they buzz off your results, and they're going to be there when things go wrong, and it just creates this level of excitement and electricity that really makes you want to do better. And you've got to ask yourself, in with all honesty, do my friends do that too?
And yes, it's just thinking about what the personality traits you want to carry with that new goal, with the new vision, and why it's important for you, and then see if the people are really sharing that your new personality traits. So it's not like your friends, some of them friends, they might not understand you at the beginning, maybe like they're not in fitness, on they might not focus on their nutrition, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing about you have to convince them your way is the best way. It's nothing about that. It's just like accepting how much influence that has on your past personality, like Lawrence just mentioned, because we become a little bit more vulnerable, especially when we start making them new changes, because they still not accumulate as a new habit. So it can be really taken away really quickly, especially when we're in bad state and we're demotivated, and let's say we have bad influence as well for people maybe not following your journey positively the way you do. So just having awareness really in them times when it's getting difficult, what's your support group, and what people you might be avoiding for a little bit of time. When you're in a better state, you can accept it much easier, right?
And that's what the warrior habits, the key habits, are all about. It's like we are able to adapt all these habits to be able to socialize with our friends. Still, we can still go out for amazing meals. No one said that you can't drink. You don't have to turn your back on anyone. But when we're in these periods of high focus, then that might be a time to go, okay, I need to avoid friend A, friend B, and friend C, because basically they like to party, or they like to get out of their mind, or they keep leading me astray to eating foods that don't align with the things that I really want right now. So just socialize wisely.
Exactly. I mean, maybe someone who likes the list, maybe for yourself, just write it down. What's your support group right now? What people you communicate about the goals you're setting, and they're really positive about it and kind of give you motivation all the time. And what people they might not as supportive, and sometimes don't be afraid to put people in the list maybe they're really close to you. It's nothing about that. It's, again, like I said before, it's not about changing them, it's about changing yourself, right?
Generally, the more you own it, the easier it becomes as well. Like if you have that open conversation, and we're going to talk about this in more detail, but before embarking on in the changes, just have a conversation. Just say, look, I know we're really close. We partied together for the last 10 years, but I want to make some changes. I'd really like if you supported me through that, and we maybe did some other things alternative to sitting in the pub all day.
Wicked. And so let's go to habit number 12, I think, right now. And habit number 12 is spending a little bit more time in nature.
Wow. Well, this is something, if you live in a big city,
getting more difficult now.
It's
right?
getting more and more difficult, but nature has an incredible power over the body. And, a lot of experts believe that most of our issues come from that disconnection of humans from the earth. The fact that we walk with shoes on concrete, and we very rarely really connect skin on earth to the core, and because the earth has ionic charge, right?
Yeah, and exactly, just that disconnect really happened for the modern world, really probably last 50 to 100 years, and so we still really in the early stages here, and we're still in a big experiment what's going to happen. But we're already seeing quite a lot of negative effects, especially in the mental health, because we have to understand we're part of this this planet, right? We're part of the life created here. So, creating that disconnect through the technology, creating that disconnect through, the advances of, easier lifestyle, we can, of course, that helps, but then understanding where we come from is really important. And, just adding to that, spending more in nature is not just spending more in nature, but having the social environment, but also having that environment when you can go within yourself a little bit more, where you can spend a little bit more time contemplating on your thoughts, contemplating on your personality, and actually start rewriting that maybe negative beliefs you have. It's really powerful tool. So the nature can be really, really powerful tool to calm your nervous system, to establish balance, and it's an amazing habit to just address on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence that we feel amazing when we get into nature. It's like, how many times have you sat and looked at a beautiful lake and just thought, I want to live there, or I want to live by the sea? It's almost instantaneous that we're connected to that. And I think if we all imagine like the perfect house, it all has a view, it all has the greenery outside, no matter how modern and beautiful inside.
And even in
I don't
kind
think
of artificial world,
Yeah.
recreating that as well in the pictures, recreating that and maybe fake grass and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I think we shouldn't ignore that, and it has a powerful healing effect on oxytocin levels, and there's receptors for in every single cell in your digestive system for that hormone. So that just instantly lifted when we get back into nature. So if you're having issues with stress and digestion, then take your shoes off, go for a walk in the grass, go find a woods, spend some time there, turn off your phone, or even better, don't take it with you, and just allow some disconnection from the modern world and get back to nature.
So guys, connect back to the nature on a daily basis. Definitely can help really with any kind of performance transformation goal as well. It's so important. So let's go to the next habit, and we're getting closer to the end of the list here as well. So next one is the breath. And it's like, when people think about like, what are you talking about, right? Everyone is breathing.
And, potentially this should have been number one. But it's more challenging for a lot of people to understand how important breath is. And it's very personal practice. When we're not in a position where we're going to push meditation on you or push certain techniques. We want you to just start with an awareness of, how many breaths are we taking in a minute? What's the depth of our breath? How does it feel? Where are we breathing? What are we breathing into our stomach? Are we breathing into our chest? The quality of the air that we breathe and the oxygen exchange that we create within our body is really the fuel source to provide our brain with the ability to function well. And so when we think about most of our bad choices are created from exposure to stress, really a really fantastic way of decreasing that exposure to stress is to provide the body with an ample and quality source of oxygen.
And thing to note here as well, so the breathing is kind of autonomic function. We can't just stop breathing, and we're not going to last quite long, probably 3 minutes, and we're done really. But it's actually semi-autonomic as well, because that's the only way we can actually control that autonomic response through our body. And what I mean by autonomic response is, we got the heart beating and we don't have much control about it. If you get stressed up, your heartbeat increases, and it's no way to really reduce that, instead of reducing the environmental stress really exposed to that. So being this training or being, emotional stress, whatever. But the breathing is a semi-autonomic. We actually get conscious. We can access the autonomic nervous system, by taking deeper, longer breaths and taking small pauses as well. We can reduce the heart rate as well. We can increase the heart rate variability, so the way your body able to recover, and just the ability of your body to recover improves as well. So being conscious in situations when you become overstimulated, and getting back to your breath, getting back to your calming breath, it's really important skill here to develop, especially for the scenarios of heavy bouts of training, when we need to perform on high levels with the short durations of time, resting periods.
I think there's just something wildly intense around just starting to focus on it and just listen. Just sit and listen to yourself breathe and focus on that and try not to think about anything else other than the breath. It's a basic strategy that's actually really, really, really powerful. And if anyone's dealing with any sleep issues, levels of anxiety, depression, then I would strongly encourage you to investigate different breath practices, whether that's pranayama or which is yoga breathing, or like meditation. There's various different forms. Just dip your toes in. It only has to be like 5 minutes a day to start with. It doesn't. It can just be. You don't have to sit in lotus pose either. You don't have to. You can lie down. You can relax. It doesn't have to be the what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't have to have that spiritual connotation that some people associate with. It's actually very much a physiological process that has amazing benefits to your health.
And just it connects to your nervous system. So guys, we invite you, next time when you go for a longer walk in the nature, just get a little bit more conscious in terms of your breath. First of all, when you walk, just analyze where you breathing from. Are you breathing, by taking deep breath through the mouth, and you breathing to your chest? Are your belly is rising as well? So first is just creating that awareness, what my state is right now. Because remember, that semi-autonomic action. So when we're not aware, it's just autonomous response. We're continuously breathing. But when we create that awareness, we can start making change, right? So I invite you to, take a deep breath through the nose, maybe hold for a couple of seconds, then breathe out really slowly, and just continue walking through that period and just breathing slowly and deeply, and try to incorporate that diaphragmal breathing when you're breathing into your belly. And I'm 100% sure whatever stress, whatever negative thoughts you had in that before the walk, before that conscious technique, you feel much, much better. You feel much more calmer, and your sleep will improve, and even digestion, all the aspects we discussed already in previous habits becomes much easier.
I just took a few nice long breaths as you were talking then, and it just had such a nice calming and relaxing effect. I just still need to remind myself to.
Okay, guys, so we're coming to our next habit, and the next habit is going to be based on stretching, and we can incorporate that into movement as well, really.
Yeah, so stretching is probably the perfect complement to weight training. The reason why we're all here is we want that aesthetic look. We want to build muscle, but it's the perfect complement to shortening the muscle is obviously lengthening the muscle too. But it's not just simply about stretching muscle. There's a network of fascia, like connective cables that cross the body, that because of the impact of stress become tight and become restrictive, and that actually offers us a lot of limitations on how well our organs work, including our lungs, which obviously changes the way that we can handle oxygen. It changes the way that changes the depth of our breath, and so impacts on our perception of the world and our stress.
And this is the time when we can actually connect to our physical self as well. So, for the power of movement, for the power of stress, we can create more awareness, especially in areas we become chronically tired because of the lifestyle, especially the current lifestyle we all have. When we're spending a lot of time on a computer, some people, they have maybe jobs will bound to seated position for long duration of time. Of course, again, this is like experiments we're running right now with your bodies. Our body is not designed to really spend a lot of time in one place, and allowing yourself to have time and ability to just move through the full range of motions, or available range of motion for yourself. So really just start getting awareness what areas are tight, what areas are a little bit more flexible, and how I can impact that through the movement, through the stretching and breathing at the same time, to calm that nervous system down, to calm the response and release the tension. again, that's going to have a lot of beneficial effects.
I think we're going to go over that in an incredible amount of detail, and understanding tension on a completely different level to you ever have before. Understanding how your gut health is connected to tension, and like polarization of ions within cells really adds to that tension. So we have to take this multi-pronged attack towards relieving tension so that we're not launching into exercise exposed to injury. So that means improving gut health, but also taking that approach of stretching and lengthening the fascia and the muscle.
And all this, idea of stretching and movement really ties up to all the habits really we talking today. Is again improvement of digestion function and improvement of circulation as well. The way your body actually can receive the intensity is so important. So when we're talking about that movement, we're not talking about high intensity training right now, but we're talking about just that connection to your body, especially in the bounds of long prolonged lack of activity really. So understanding that this is another conscious way for us to connect to our body, to understand what areas needs to be worked a little bit more, what areas needs to be have more conscious control before we bound to more high intensity activities.
Yeah, and the impact on sleep as well. Stretching is incredible for improving sleep quality. And if I think personally about a lot of the transformations that I've done with the yoga teachers I've spent time with, they change so fast because they have that yin style life. So when we balance that out with the yang based intense training, they really have all those elements together. But when we think about, myself included, young guys, we tend to want to focus on that hard training and not balance that system out with the stretching and let's call it yoga or movement.
It's many modalities we can incorporate there, but just knowing you have that tool in place for yourself. Let's say being on itself, let's say when you working in office and then you come home and you feel restless still and just you want to calm your nervous system down. That's a great tool to have. For 10 to 15 minutes, just spend a little bit more time going through different positions. Also, great tool to calm your nervous system down when you've done high intensive training as well. So it's a great modality to cool your nervous system down, to cool the muscles, increase the response, increase the nutrients coming to a muscle, so it can help to recover and help to actually modulate stress better. Go to the next one. So next one is going to be based on stress. So it's kind of tied up. All them habits are really tied up with each other.
Yeah. So we've framed the fact that every habit prior to this has been about decreasing the impact of stress or decreasing the way our body perceives that stress. But sometimes we can just actively choose to stress less by not putting ourselves in situations that we know are going to exacerbate our stress response. Do we need to take on more responsibility? Do we need to get that car that we can't really afford? Do we need to have that house that we're going to struggle to pay the mortgage? It's about actively choosing not to put stress on yourself sometimes by not being in that, not chasing that girl that drives you crazy or causes you those bad habits, by actively going out of your way to say, no, I'm okay. I don't need the hassle.
And yes, it's just, you have to understand, we have limited amount of energy through the day as well. And it's not like, if we can, we like whatever environment will throws at us, especially some people will have maybe more stress capacity, so to prevent overwhelming responses. But especially when we're in a chronic kind of state of restlessness, of course that will have massive effect. So your understanding is a limitations there, and understanding what would be realistic ways to accept that stress. So we're not talking about stress is bad for you, but we're talking about consistent periods of stress for long durations will have detrimental effects. But acute stress, like, let's say having a good intensive training session for 30 minutes is going to be beneficial, because again, the bouts of activity will allow your body to adapt to it, and the next time when you do it, you might going to feel a bit easier, especially when you have the time to recover, time to sleep, time to eat and digest properly. So it's really understanding that chronic stress is continuous. So let's say it can be emotional, it can be physical, and also can be coming from many sources, but just understanding how long that been in your life.
Yeah, it has an accumulative value. Stress is one currency on you, as far as the body's concerned. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It's going to stockpile, and excessive amounts is going to take you over the edge and create a response that's often undesirable.
Right, so we're getting closer to our last list, and it's definitely not the least important, and probably the most exciting for everyone as well. So that's habit about having a little bit more sex, actually, for the day.
So sex is the ultimate parasympathetic activity. It calms the body in a vast way. We're talking about extreme release of oxytocin. It improves sleep, longevity. It protects against illness. It protects against disease. Building a relationship where we can connect with someone in a healthy manner. I'm not talking about going out to bars till early hours in the morning, chasing tail. I'm talking about, good, strong connections with people that really support and care you, have this crazy influence on your health. And I'm sure I don't have to convince you in any way to take this habit up. I think everyone enjoys the interaction of having that sexual connection, but actively understand that it's so good for you.
And again, just understanding, when we talk about stress as well, is the stress is actually inhibiting the ability for the body to, have that physical relationship and enjoy the physical relationship. It's so important. It's in our nature, right? And we kind of, we're not really talking much. It's not much information as well. It's almost like a taboo as well, and people avoiding the topic. But it's such an important topic to discuss as well. And it's like so many people are really in a position when they might not enjoying that much, or they would like to have more intimate relationship, but because of the situations like chronic stress, because of worry and anxiety, and even anxiety about that physical interaction as well. So a lot of people have that inhibiting effect and maybe negative effect about it. So really just start creating that new relationship with the person you love as well, with the if you're not in a relationship, like what kind of relationship would you like to have, right? And really thinking about that, your performance as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking before filming this podcast about how much easier life is when we are able to perform and provide that level of service and commitment to our loved ones, and how easy life flows when our roles are taken care of. And obviously that performance all depends on how you treat yourself. Everything that you put in your body, everything that you expose yourself to, all the stress of the world, all impacts on natural levels of testosterone, which plays a key role in our sexual health and performance. And actually, fundamentally, a lot of our happiness and connectivity with the world depends on a healthy sexual relationship, and so it shouldn't be overlooked. And it's 100% has its pride of place within the key habits.
So guys, get really honest with yourself in terms of how much that occupies of your life. You're getting like a daily sexual activity, or you're the one who struggles maybe. And again, you just for yourself, creating that awareness, really, what the steps I need to take to improve that, what the steps I would like to take to improve my current relationship, or if I'm not in a relationship currently, what kind of relationship I would like to have. And physical activity and physical performance, improving your health, really.
I think that's a wrap.
I think that's a wrap. So we actually covered quite a lot in this podcast, and it's quite lengthy, but it's really important one as well.
Yeah, like we're just going to confirm again. This is everything. This, if you can nail all these key habits, you will have a better life. You will enjoy your experience of the world to a greater degree, and there will be very little that crops up in life that you won't be able to handle. And I know life will throw some shit at you and have a way of really trying to knock you down, but they're called warrior habits because we're creating this resilience, this attitude where the world is ready. The world needs to be ready for you because you're coming. The new version of you is coming, and it better get out of your way. So I really want you to embrace the habits. Don't worry about the detail until we tell you, and good things are coming your way.
And definitely for some of you, it might be a bit overwhelming now when we've done this podcast and we just go through many habits. You might not focusing right now and just realize, wow, most of them habits I need to kind of develop right now. We're not asking you to do that today, right? It's not like a transformation will happen in an instant. It's something we need to start creating awareness and understanding, where I am right now along that continuum, where I need to start. And this is a great start for any performance gains, for any kind of transformation you want to achieve, and overall to any goal you want to achieve. The health and performance is really linked in together. If we don't have health, we don't have the habits established to the personality you want to create, well, guess what? It's going to be really difficult, and you're going to be imposing them negative emotions all the time. So guys, just to wrap up now.
Finally.
Yes, let's close that now as well. All right.
Okay, guys, whichever level of coaching that you've taken on board, feel free to get in touch. Feel free to reach out for some support. Have a good day, guys.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.